Ecclesiastes 3:1-13. For every thing there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven.
A time to be born and a time to die.
A time to plant, a time to pluck up what is planted.
A time to kill and a time to heal.
A time to break down and a time to build up.
A time to weep and a time to laugh.
A time to mourn and a time to dance.
A time to throw away stones and a time to gather stones together.
A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing.
A time to seek and a time to lose.
A time to keep and a time to throw away.
A time to care and a time to sow.
A time to keep silence and a time to speak.
A time to love and a time to hate.
A time for war and a time for peace. What gain have the workers from their toil? I have seen the business that God has given to everyone to be busy with. God has made everything suitable for its time. Moreover, God has put a sense of past and future into their minds, yet they cannot find what God has done from the beginning to the end. I know that there is nothing better for them to be happy and enjoy themselves as long as they live. Moreover, it is God's gift that all should eat and drink and take pleasure in all their toil.
Let us pray. Gracious Lord, may the words of my mouth and the meditation of each heart here be acceptable in your sight, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. So we've just read from the book of Ecclesiastes. King Solomon, David's son, was the writer of Ecclesiastes, and it's believed that he wrote the book toward the end of his life. So he's an older man, and what he's doing is he's looking back on his life, and he's trying to evaluate what it's all meant. And he wrote the book of Ecclesiastes because he wanted to pass on to others what he had learned. Now, in my opinion, Ecclesiastes is kind of a hard book to understand. It's not a hard book to read. It's fairly short. You can read it through pretty quickly. But I find it hard to understand. But I think that what Solomon's point is that when we chase after things, thinking that they're going to bring us satisfaction, we'll never be satisfied. Solomon tried to find happiness in a lot of different places. He tried to find happiness in wisdom, in pleasure, in work, and he also tried to find happiness in wealth. And what he found was that not one of these things could bring him happiness. So if you pursue wisdom, sounds like a good thing. If you pursue wisdom, thinking that you'll be happy once you have your questions answered, once you get that degree, you'll find that it's never enough and you'll never be satisfied. There's always more questions to ask. No one can be perfectly wise. There's always more to learn. If you pursue pleasure, thinking that you'll be happy after you take that trip or find the right party or the next drug or the perfect high, you'll find that it's never enough and you'll never be satisfied. If you pursue work, thinking that you'll be happy once you get that project done, or you get that next promotion, or you take that next step in your career, you'll find that it's never enough, and you won't be satisfied. The pursuit of wealth, too, is empty and meaningless, because you see, the more you have, the more you want. The more you have, the more other people want to take what you have. The more you have, the more you worry about losing what you have. The more you have, the more tempting it is to be greedy. Wealth doesn't satisfy. It, too, is never enough. I think Solomon's point is that when we focus exclusively on one area of living, we miss out on the moments of living. So instead of focusing on getting more and more and more of something, we should instead delight in the variety that life has to offer us and welcome the balance that we can find in living between the extremes of life's seasons. Life is change. It's filled with many different experiences, many different seasons. It's filled with joy and sorrow, with mourning and dancing, with births and deaths, with breaking down and building up, finding and losing, tilling and reaping. Life is change. And yet God holds all of the seasons of our living. The ups and the downs, the light and the darkness, the sunshine and the rain. It's all held by God. In fact, Solomon tells us that it is God's gift to us that we should eat and drink, that we should take pleasure in our work, that we should enjoy our leisure and find meaning in our learning. A wealthy businessman was horrified to see a fisherman sitting beside his boat playing with a child. "Why aren't you out fishing?" asked the businessman. "Because I've caught enough fish for today," said the fisherman. "Well, why don't you catch some more?" "What would I do with them?" "You could earn more money," said the businessman. "Then with the extra money, you could buy a bigger boat, go into deeper waters and catch more fish. And then you could make enough money to buy nylon nets. And with those nets, you could catch even more fish and make more money. And with that money, you could own 2 boats, maybe even 3. Eventually, you could have a whole fleet of boats and be rich like me." "Then what would I do?" asked the fisherman. "Then," said the businessman, "you could really enjoy life." Well, the fisherman looked at him kind of confused, and he asked, "What do you think I'm doing now?" John Leeks lives on a small farm in New York, and he teaches writing at a local college. Well, there's never enough time to get all of the work done on the farm, and he has this little orchard that was planted haphazardly long ago, and it's neglected and overgrown. And he says, "Though I feel my failure to bring the old orchard to fruitfulness, I feel no real guilt. In fact, I feel a sort of pleasure in watching it turn wild and useless. When I walk in it, it tells me that a man's caring comes to an end. It tells me that life is lived within the boundaries of extremes, of wildness and domestication. It tells me that my order is not the only order. And in its message, I find comfort." We are all living between the boundaries of extremes, laughing and weeping, dancing and mourning, living between the boundaries of our being born and our dying. Every life is finite. It is here and then it's gone, leaving its memories to dissolve into eternity. None of us know how many marbles we have left in our jar. The Apostle James wrote, "Life is a vapor that appears for a time and then vanishes." It is the most valuable possession that we have, and yet it is the thing that we waste and misuse more often than anything else. How much life is lost in the pursuit of worthless things? How much life is lost to worry and apprehension and concerns? How much life is lost to anger and bitterness and resentment? Work is necessary, but we can take our work too seriously and we can make a god out of our occupations. Recreation and play are vital parts of living, but we can become fanatical in our pursuit of sports and recreation. Rest is necessary for sustaining life, and yet it can easily slide into simple laziness. Life is too valuable to be thrown away. Life is too precious to lose out on even one moment of it. You know, none of us would seek out or wish on anyone the negative aspects of life. But even the negative aspects of life can bring us a blessing when we entrust them to God's hands. For everything, there is a season, a time for every matter under heaven. May you take time for holding and letting go. May you take time for planting and reaping, for weeping and laughing, mourning and dancing, keeping and throwing. As you live between the extremes, may you find joy in your work, rest in your leisure, and meaning in your learning. May your life be blessed with many seasons, because it is God's gift to you. Amen. Our prayer time today is a time for letting go. Time for letting go of the things that we don't need, that weigh us down. We let go of regret, unburdening our hearts. We remember the promise that God will never abandon us, no matter what. We let go about worry about things we can't control, giving it, entrusting it into the hands of God. In a moment, we will begin with some silence, and it's okay to try to not find words to fill that silence in your head. It's okay if your thoughts won't quiet down. Just find a stillness. Perhaps call attention to your feet touching the floor, or your hands in your lap, or your breath in and out. There is nothing expected of you now. There is nowhere to go, nowhere to be. This stillness, this moment, is enough.
losing touch with the creation of which we are a part. Forgive us. For the times when we don't let things unfold in their own time. Forgive us. Help us slow down when it is the season of our lives for doing so. Help us celebrate and embrace the ebbs and flow of life. Give us the ability to sense the balance so that we might take pleasure in our toil and enjoy the fruits of our labor.
In this moment, we hear your promise. I have set in motion all you need for happiness. It's okay to slow down and reconnect with the world around you.
You do not ask us to go back to some yesteryear, but to take time to smell the roses, savor the twilight, bask in the sun. We are your children, created to flourish along with all creation.